Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 529. Epilogue 2. Not Found Anywhere. Part 4. Isu Jiang was standing before the darkest star. Will you go with us? Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, is slowly opening her eyes. The location Persephone rested in wasn't the underworld. That was because the passageway to her home had disappeared after Starstream collapsed. She was currently staying in the special guest room in the industrial complex. She stayed there, staring at the night sky every day, as if to comprehend the most ancient fables. The fact that I'm still alive, it must mean that Mai isn't in this place, at the very least. She slowly turned her head, her eyes still radiating some warmth. Warmth, left behind by a certain someone. Isu Jiang knew whose fable that was. Fable, Promise of the Darkest Night, is continuing on with its storytelling. It was from the king of the underworld, who swore to be by her side until the end of the world. And like he promised, he died instead of Persephone at the end of the world. Let us go. We must save that child. Asterisk. Zhang Huiwen knocked on a worn-down door of the complex's special guest room. Is anyone home? She turned the doorknob, and the door opened without resistance. What greeted her immediately afterwards, a holographic figurine. Kim Dokja, escaping from the water dragon. It was the figurine of Kim Dokja during his escape from the water dragon. Not only that, but the line he uttered during the event also floated up below the hologram as well. Alright, then. Time to go outside. Zhang Huiwen stared at that bizarre 3D sculpture with a slightly dumbfounded face. That wasn't the only figurine, though. Kim Dokja, destroying the absolute throne. Kim Dokja, liberating the demon world. Not even Yusung or Gilyong's rooms look like this. As if she came to sightsee, Zhang Huiwen studied each and every figurine. As she followed the lines of these action figures arranged by the year and the scenario number, she abruptly recalled their past. Uriel must have been looking at Kim Dokja during all of these moments. Among these was a rear tentacle from a squid, seemingly a part of a special limited edition collection. Kim Dokja, the squid's last tentacle, made by Yang San. She looked at this thing with puzzled eyes, before reaching out to it. But, just as her hand touched the glass display case, a true voice could be heard. If you carelessly touch that, Uriel's going to get really mad. How long had it been? An archangel with a rather wan complexion was sitting by the table near the display case. No, wait, not many would actually recognize her as an archangel these days. A woman who silently flipped the pages of a book, not even bothering to look even though she was the one who started the conversation. Zhang Huiwen quietly stared at this woman's long eyelashes before asking her. Gabriel. Do you know where Uriel is? Constellation, lily blooming on Aquarius, is revealing her presence. The power of a fable spread out like ripples from her entire figure. Perhaps this was the archangel displaying her last vestige of pride. Oh, the last incarnation of Eden. Gabriel closed the book gently, her eyes gleaming brightly. It seemed that she had already figured out why Zhang Huiwen came to visit. I've crossed world lines before. And it was truly a dizzying experience, indeed. But what all of you are trying to do here exceeds that. You won't make it out alive. Is that how Eden jinxes others? This is your reality. You must not run away from it. You can't seriously be considering undoing this ending you earned by finally bringing down this starstream, now are you? The reality. The weight of that word pressed down slightly on Zhang Huiwen's chest. Rather than replying, though, she looked around at the room's decor again, instead. The bunk bed shared by Uriel and Gabriel was located on the corner. And the word Eden was stuck above it like a poster. The nebula Eden was finished. No one could deny that truth. What makes one's reality isn't the environment nor the location. Even though Eden was finished, someone still chose to call this very room her Eden. Because archangels were still here. Even if there were only two. It's a cool looking Eden, though. Zhang Huiwen turned around to find Gabriel looking at her with trembling eyes. Can you tell me where Uriel is? Behind you. Zhang Huiwen looked back and sure enough, Uriel was there. She must have been coming back from her junk food shopping trip, because her small figure was holding large bundles filled with all sorts of snacks. Her emerald-hued eyes were opened wide as if she was quite startled at the moment. Zhang Huiwen stared at her constellation sponsor for a long while. The brilliant light of an archangel couldn't almost be felt from Uriel. Her wings, that used to be on her back, had long disappeared. Even her clothes had changed. Instead of her favorite black dress, she was kitted out in a gray hoodie and a pair of track pants. Huiwen ah. Zhang Huiwen knew better than anyone why Uriel ended up looking like that. Uriel. Wouldn't Uriel be happier if she remained here, honestly speaking? Uriel the Archangel had carried out the scenarios far longer than herself. In that case, was it the right thing to do, dragging her back into the depths of hell one more time? Rather than opening her mouth, though, Zhang Huiwen squeezed her fist tightly. When she did, a faint lick of flame rose up from there. The hellfire. The purest flames in this world, given to her by her constellation sponsor. The moment that flame was lit up, the ever so slightly dim darkness of the room was illuminated by yet another sculpture emitting the exact same flame. Zhang Huiwen turned her head towards it without thinking too much, and saw a figurine sporting the same face as hers. It wasn't only Kim Dokjaz in this room, as it turned out. As if she was under a trance, Zhang Huiwen approached the glass display case and looked inside. There she was, wielding the judge's sword and firing pure white hellfire. My one and only incarnation. Zhang Huiwen worked hard to suppress the emotions powerfully welling up inside and spoke. Uriel. Huiwen ah. The moment she heard that warm, gentle voice, Zhang Huiwen realized something. Her constellation sponsor already knew everything. Please, cheer me on as I live that life one more time. She slowly turned her head and saw Uriel smiling sorrowfully. As if to ask whether this would be alright or not. And towards such Uriel, Zhang Huiwen knelt down. Please, become my constellation sponsor one more time. Asterisk. Where did that idiot black flame dragon disappear to? Flame dragon. General Nim. Where are you, my General Nim? Those voices came from Han Suyang and E.G. Hai, currently searching for their constellations. And in the middle of the chaotic sea of people, Yu Yonghyuk was looking at his young sister next to him. She had this huge pout on her face, probably angry at something. He sighed deeply. You'll be safer by remaining here. This world will soon stabilize. And this world will, but you aren't going to be here, Appa. This would be Yumia's first time not using honorifics. Yu Yonghyuk was about to reply to that, but changed what he wanted to say at the last second. We will return. When? After we get through to the end of the otherworld line, and after it'll be too dangerous. I can't take you there. Liar. A faint trace of the transcendental aura leaked out from Yumia's figure. That was unmistakably the status of a transcender. Rather surprisingly, Yumiya had awakened the first stage of the transcender after training only for the past few months. She was the youngest transcender in history, which was truly a shocking level of talent. If you were going to say that now, why didn't you stop me from training? I received the same training as Gilyang Appa and Yu Sungyoni, didn't I? Please be honest with me, Appa. Yu Yonghyuk looked into the girl's eyes that showed not a hint of wavering, and slowly closed his. They came up with a plan so that no one would be lost. And it was far more foolproof and perfect than any other. However, variables always had a way of rearing their heads without warning. And Yumiya, she could potentially fall into danger. Yu Yonghyuk lowered his gaze, got down on his knees slightly, and looked straight at Yumiya. I'd like you to come with us. That was the reply she wanted to hear. Her small hand patted him on the head. As soon as you regress, our comrades will rush to fetch you. You'd all have died without me during the capture the flag battles, anyway. After saying that, Yu Mia opened her mouth wide. Yu Yonghyuk peered deep inside her mouth, and was about to say something with a deep frown on his face. But then... Hey! We found them all. Han Suyang, performing a deadly headlock on the black flame dragon, was walking over there while waving her hand. And behind her, Ijihai clinging onto the arms of the maritime war god and Goryeo #1 swordsman could be seen. Yu Yonghyuk frowned at them instead. And where is the monkey? Han Suyang wordlessly pointed with her chin. Constellation, most ancient liberator, is currently acting self-important. Yu Yonghyuk narrowed his eyes and looked up in the air. The smirking great sage was floating up there. When did you arrive? Aren't your preparations just too slow? If my Magne dies because of your tardiness, I'm going to rip you apart limb from limb where you stand. It seemed that, even though his status had fallen and Starstream was destroyed, a myth grade wasn't called a myth for no reason. Only the great sage was capable of emitting such vigor even when the system had long disappeared. Yu Yonghyuk replied tersely. If you get in my way, I will not hesitate to cut you down. The great sage smiled, his pearly white teeth in full display. Why don't we end that unfinished battle of ours during the next turn? Let's find out if you can get anywhere remotely close to the secretive plotter. Okay, sure thing. Is everyone finished with their preparations? Han Suyang's voice caused tense expressions to form on the faces of the waiting incarnations. All the members of Kim Dokja Company participating in this regression trip gathered around. Yu Sanga, Zhang Huiwen, Yi Hyansong, Xin Yusung, Yi Gilyang, Yi Jihai, Yi Seolhua, and Zhang Haiyang. In addition, even Yi Sujiang and Selena Kim, too. The industrial complex's residents came out to bid them goodbye. Conquering King, please remember what I told you. Fei Hu, the future of the continent rests on your shoulders. Ranveer Khan. And among the crowd, a small dakibi was floating in the air. Bu. Xin Yusung reached out even without realizing it. Bu, staying back along with the rest of the residents, carried a vaguely sorrowful expression. Bu couldn't go with them. Just like how it was with Han Myango's daughter, Bu too was an existence born after the world's destruction had begun. She couldn't become the storyteller during the path they were about to walk on. Bu spoke as if to console the companions. Don't be too sad. Whichever world line you end up, I'll always cheer you on. I'm the Dakibi King, you know. If I train a little bit harder, and if I uncover more of the inheritances the Wennies left behind, I should be able to cross the world lines, too. In that case, we should be able to meet up again. We'll wait for you. Even if it's tens of thousands of years later. Bu cried out Baat. And firecrackers went off all over the industrial complex like big-scale fireworks. We are heading out. Stigma, Group Regression LV.1, is activating. Finally, Yu Yonghyuk commenced the regression. The moment his stigma activated, the figures of Yu Yonghyuk and his companions were dyed in the shower of resplendent light. It was then. You stinking bastards! You didn't even come to fetch me. Gong Pildu ran in from the distance and shouted angrily, before jumping into the shower of light belonging to the regressing party. Quack 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 dash. The world began breaking down. The companions held each other's hands tightly and stared at the disappearing world. Bu's bright smile was distorting away. Could they meet again? Pain akin to their souls shattering into tiny little pieces followed soon after. Xin Yusung clenched her teeth tightly. Yu Yonghyuk always had to endure these moments all by himself. Fortunately, he wasn't alone this time. Xin Yusung soon realized that she was traveling in the distant galaxy. The background was getting further away from her at a speed too fast to see. And different. Star streams from other world lines could be seen, as well. The outer gods, abandoned inside the ashes of those stories, were calling out to the companions. Aya. Over here, over here, over here, over here. Han Suyang gripped Xin Yusung's hand even tighter and raised her voice. Keep your wits about you if you don't want to get sucked in there. Shin Yusung repeatedly looked back to the outer gods, growing further away from her. Kim Dokja saved outer gods during the last regression turn. He gave names to these forgotten stories. Even then, this universe was still filled with so many other forgotten ones. Han Suyong spoke again. We're not Kim Dokja. We can't save all those worlds. Not just Shin Yusung, but the other companions knew that. The current them were in too much of a hurry to save a single world before their eyes die. But, someday. Stories that couldn't see the end were all flowing towards somewhere. The outer gods in the distance all changed back to the beautiful galaxies. Every tragedy looked so captivating when viewed from afar. Han Suyong shouted out. Hey! Was this thing supposed to take this long? Are you sure we're on the right TR? It was right then that they were slammed by the thunderous noise of a book being ripped apart. Re-yip dash. Worldline has detected the activation of the group regression. Starstream is pointing out the probability of the applicable stigma. Applicable stigma is a power that exceeds the limit of the probability. Something had gone wrong here. Suchachachuchit. Just as Han Suyong was about to shout something out, the view out front was swallowed up by the darkness and it simply vanished. And when she opened her eyes again, she found herself abandoned in a plain resembling a blindingly white snowfield. What the hell? Where am I? Her companions were nowhere to be seen. The only one she could see was Yu Young Hyuk carrying a stupid expression on his face. The world lines got into Yu Young Hyuk closed his eyes and began sensing something, before opening his mouth again. We did prepare accordingly. And as for the rest of our companions, it seems that they reached the 1865th turn safely. Only we ended up here. And where is here? Most likely, we're entrapped in the gap between the world lines. Han Suyong surveyed her surroundings once more. Several massive, pitch-black structures were floating up here and there within this snow-white field. Wait for a moment. I shall gather more fables and reactivate the stigma, said Yu Young Hyuk. How long will that take? Hurry up, will ya? If we get there too late, our plan or whatever will go down the drain. Yu Young Hyuk seemed to be in deep concentration already, as he didn't bother to reply. Han Suyong abruptly got up from her spot and extended her hand towards the nearest structure. When she did, something akin to jet black graphite particles stained her hand. What the heck is? And right next moment, the overall shape of the structure was drawn out inside her mind. She was sure of it. This structure, it was shaped like this. And as for that other structure just beyond her, slowly, so very slowly, a creeping chill ran down her spine. She began reading the structures one by one. And each one soon became a single phrase. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Chapter 530. Epilogue 2. Not Found Anywhere. Part 5. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Han Suyong narrowed her eyes after seeing that phrase. Isn't that the name of Kim Dokja's skill? Why would such a thing be engraved in the gap between the world lines? The words continued on. This was inevitable, I thought. And the reason why I accepted Mother's actions also had to be this, as well. The reason why I inexplicably started writing an essay. The reason why I had to become a son of a murderer. These words were moving towards a certain direction at a constant speed. These sentences were fluently stretching from the past towards the future. It was then, Han Suyong came to realize something. The regression was an act of branching out to a new world line from a certain point onwards while going backwards in the current world line. So, what would happen if they get stuck in this type of gap while going back in the world line? If that's what really happened, then this point in time where such sentences could be read must be. Hey, Yu Young Hyuk. This. When she looked back, she realized that Yu Young Hyuk too was looking at something else. Boom, kaboom, dash. The snowfield rumbled. Someone was pounding on the gap of the world lines they were stuck in. Spit her out. I said, spit her out, now. Kim Dokja was crying. This situation, could it be? I began crazily pounding on the wall. I was overcome with goosebumps. To think that everything would become stories. To think every action we took and every word we spoke would become scenarios and morph into sentences above the wall. Shut up. This is how I feel. She couldn't see his face. But Han Soo-young could tell just by reading these sentences. Kim Dokja was responsible for these words. Kim Dokja was fighting somewhere, within the past of the third turn of the ways of survival. Kim Dokja wanted to know. What should he do? What should he do to break this wall down? Could this be the price for reading the ways of survival? Did my own reality become a novel, because I read that novel? When Han Soo-young read those sentences, she became sure of it. This is back then during the Dark Castle, said Han Soo-young. The Dark Castle? This event happened right after Kim Dokja fought against the Devourer of the Dream. He told me about it some time ago. He got trapped inside his own skill, and just before they reached the final scenario, Han Soo-young got a chance to talk to Kim Dokja for the entire night. It was to discuss their plan moving forward, but also to talk about the matters of the past, as well. They thought that some stuff they didn't manage to resolve could potentially serve as clues for the future. Now that I think about it, something did feel off back then. Someone called out to me, but if it weren't for that voice, I might have ended up in some serious trouble in that place. Hey, Kim Dokja. Han Soo-young, stop wasting your time. This is nothing more than recorded history. The gap must exist as a gap. Only then would the rest exist not as gaps. However, the fact that sentences could be found in a place like this, didn't that mean there were still stories they haven't read yet? Han Soo-young reached out towards the huge letters again. The pitch-black particles stained her hand this time as well. But they weren't the graphite particles. No, they were very small and really fine black particles made out of ones and zeros. Han Soo-young gripped the word even harder than before. If this was the recorded story, then couldn't it be possible to change the records, somehow? A new fable of incarnation, Han Soo-young, is waking up. Su-cha-cha-cha-chit. An incredible shower of sparks exploded and began attacking her whole body. It was as if every sentence existing in the world was glaring at her. Yu Young-hyuk cried out. You fool. Now isn't the fable, revision specialist, has begun its storytelling. Su-cha-cha-cha-chit. Hey! Wake the hell up. When she gripped the sentence, the life contained within it was transmitted to her. It was Kim Dokja's life. His life, lived for the purpose of writing this sentence on the final wall. Han Soo-young shouted at Kim Dokja, currently wrestling against the fourth wall. This is your skill. Don't get swallowed up by your own skill. As if she was trying to revise the recorded sentence, she grabbed onto the entirety of that sentence and shook it hard. Maybe she was wrong on this one. Kim Dokja might be able to get through this danger all by himself, and her voice might never reach him. Even then, Han Soo-young still left behind her own sentence on top of the wall. Su-cha-cha-cha-chit. Because, maybe, just maybe, someone beyond the wall might get to hear her. Han Soo-young, the regression is starting again. Shut up. Hey, you too. Hurry up and say something. Han Soo-young's and Yu Young-hyuk's figures began scattering away again under the bright rays of light. Before completely disappearing, though, the frowning Yu Young-hyuk did say something. Cancel your skill, Kim Dokja. Asterisk. Yu Sang-ah blinked her eyes in a daze. Faint rays of light were surrounding her. A monitor in front seemed to sway unsteadily. It currently displayed the personnel records she was browsing just now. It didn't feel real to her. She blinked again, and felt the sensations picked up by her weak, frail body. This was the body of an incarnation, unfettered by the blessings of the system that also had lost the powers of skills and stigmata. These were the sensations of a human being. She really did come back. The things she needed to do popped up in her head one by one. First, confirm the starting point of her regression. Attempt communication with the other companions through the emergency contact lines. And then, she suddenly shot up from her seat, causing many gazes to land on her next. She recalled old, familiar names one by one, such as Deputy Kim Min-woo, the section chief Jang Eun-young, and haha, so what do you think about the HR team? Sanga SSI, do you like it here? The man walking towards her with a bit of an attitude as if to pick a fight with her, that was the executive director Kan Young-hyun. And the person subserviently following after him, the head of the finance department, Han Myung-oh. The latter, cautiously reading the atmosphere until then, smiled sheepishly in her direction. He was not the Han Myung-oh she grew to know for the past 4 years. The one she knew didn't cross over to this regression turn, after all. You sang SSI, the sale you made this time was truly common. Without saying a word, she began running. She brushed past the executive director Kong and rushed into the corridor. Suddenly, her sense of reality seemed to be blurring. Did she really, truly succeed in regressing? The view of the world that used to be so familiar went past her. She used to come to work here at the fixed time every morning, and went home at the designated hour, too. That was the rule set of this world, and she diligently stuck to it. Hey, look here. You sang SSI. Her employee ID card was exactly the same, too. There was a time in her past life when she struggled so hard to have this around her neck. As if this little thing could act as the proof of her true worth. When she arrived at the QA team's offices, utterly out of breath, several employees began recognizing her. You sang SSI? Her smartphone hidden in the pocket continuously cried out, incoming messages criticizing her sudden, abrupt departure. And then, loud yells ringing out from behind her. Yu Sang-ah approached a certain partition, one step at a time. The person she remembered, he was their dot. A man wearing a headphone and looking up at her. The spare battery always being charged in the corner of the partition. That was where the Kim Dokja she remembered was. Kim Dokja, before the scenarios went underway. Without realizing it, she reached out and grasped both of his cheeks. UHT. Kim Dokja's eyes were opened really wide. Surrounding people, startled by her sudden actions, began murmuring to themselves. However, the words she was currently listening to didn't come from them. You Sang-ah, why are you so cold-hearted? Just like how this Kim Dokja is Kim Dokja, Kim Dokja left behind in that place is also Kim Dokja, you know. You are. Han Soo-young's words were filling up the inside of her head. Why did she respond so coldly back then? Dokja SSI. She now knew, though. Looking at this, Kim Dokja's dumbfounded face, how could she not? Soo-young. I too have memories that I treasure. She was not an author like Han Soo-young, nor was she the protagonist like Yu Young-hyuk. No, she was Yu Sang-ah. Yu Sang-ah, who was Kim Dokja's colleague and also his friend. For no reason whatsoever, tears welled up to obscure her vision, but she still managed to smile brightly. She returned here in order to protect this Kim Dokja. Kim Dokja's lips bobbed up and down. His murky eyes began to gain a semblance of light little by little, as if he had finally recognized her. And when she witnessed the faint hints of sparks dancing within those eyes, Yu Sang-ah opened her mouth. Let's go and find the story you've forgotten about. Asterisk. Yu Sang-ah led Kim Dokja and immediately left the company building. Just to make sure, she didn't forget to shout at other people too, as they dashed through the corridors. It's not too late now, so please leave the office and try to catch a grasshopper, at the very least. The duo reached the Gwanghwamun station, and the very first one to arrive there, Jang Hui-won, greeted them. She stood under the undamaged statues of King Sejong and Yi Sun-shin, and waved her hand. You sang SSI. Out of the happiness at this reunion, they energetically hugged each other. It seemed that the only one to reach here so far was Jang Hui-won. What's wrong with Dokja SSI? The state of his memories doesn't seem to be stable at the moment. He's experiencing confusion at trying to perceive reality. She could only guess that this state was due to him being an avatar. What about Younghyuk SSI and Sooyoung SSI? Yu Sang-ah asked. I couldn't get a hold of him yet. I don't know about Younghyuk SSI, but Sooyoung SSI is the type to call everyone before doing anything else, so. It was already several hours since they successfully regressed. Those two might even go as far as to borrow phones to contact the others. So, the fact that they didn't could only mean that something had possibly gone wrong somewhere. What about the others? Gilyoung-yi is currently in the countryside, while Yusung-yi and Ji-hai said they might be a little late getting here. As for Hyeonsung SSI, Pant, Huiwon SSI, Sang-ah SSI. A huge bear was running towards them from the distance while waving both of his hands. The bear also happened to be wearing a military uniform, too. Ing? But, didn't you say you can't come out because you were stuck in the base? I left without permission, actually. Is it okay to do that? The world is about to be destroyed, so it won't matter anyway. There is still some time left until then to say about to, you know. While saying that, Jang Hui-won showed everyone her phone screen displaying the timetable. D28 until the start of the scenario. Lee Hyun-sung formed a serious expression. Didn't we aim to regress to the day before the beginning of the scenarios? This is for the better, I think. We got ourselves more time to prepare, so we might be able to save more people this way. VRR. People began showing up in the chat room they agreed to join before disembarking. Jang Hui-won used the translation app to read the incoming messages. China's Fei who has arrived safely. Plenty of fine dust, though. Ranveer Khan of India, I have arrived no problem. Along with the nostalgic smell, too. This is Asaka Ren from Japan. I see the familiar ceiling. No problem here, so far. Omega. The past world line's 100 strongest incarnations, having successfully regressed, were now gathering in one place. The companions looking at each other nodded their heads simultaneously. Let's start with the operation. Asterisk. D21. Arrest warrant has been issued for Lieutenant E, suspected of stealing a large cache of firearms from the military base. The sudden propagation of apocalypse theory in the internet recently has caused some experts to D14. The apocalypse theory, expected to fizzle out as a passing fad, still shows no signs of abating after 2 weeks. The apocalyptist Selena Kim urges people to prepare supplies for the sudden upheaval that will happen in 2 weeks' time. Several famous individuals from the world of finance have sympathized with the apocalypse theory, causing the public to criticize. D7. Many ampoules containing microbes earmarked for research have been stolen from a prominent pharmaceutical company. Recently, the frog egg collection craze has swept across children in their teens. D1. Finally, only 1 day remains until the day of the apocalypse as prophesied by the apocalyptist Selena Kim, and D-Day. Lee Seol-hwa looked at the small ampoule gripped in her hand. Living insects or their eggs have been put inside the ampoules. To save as many people as possible, we even spread the locations of the hidden emergency ampoules in the internet, too. And now, time to pray for some good luck. 4 hours before the apocalypse. New Delhi, India. Preparations are complete. Beijing, China. Preparations are complete here, as well. Washington, USA. We're also ready. 1 hour before the apocalypse. Seoul, South Korea. Preparations, complete. 10 minutes before the apocalypse. Team Shin Yusung and Lee Gil-young. Finished with the deployment to the 3rd subway line's location. Currently at the Apgujeong Station's platform for the 3rd subway line. While listening to the sounds of subway train rumbling in closer, Shin Yusung suddenly opened her mouth. It's going to work, right? Of course. How many frog eggs do you have on you? 102, what about you? 524. Shin Yusung furrowed her brows and glared at Yi Gilyong's pet bottle. Hey, you! If you hog that many for yourself, what about other people? Arg, they are all carrying ampoules with them, so it'll be fine. If I'm to become stronger than that sooty bastard, I gotta start really rich this time around. With this, It was right then, someone snatched the pet bottle off Yi Gilyong's hands. The boy jumped in shock and quickly looked back to spot a familiar man standing there. It's you, sooty bastard. Yoonghyak Ajusi? When did you arrive? Just now. A problem occurred with the stigma, and that delayed us. Yu Yoonghyak panted heavily and wiped the sweat off his forehead while tucking the pet bottle inside his jacket. What about Kim Dokja? He asked. Seal Wyoni is with him because of his poor condition. Maybe because the scenario hasn't started yet. He was fine for a little while, but he's unconscious again. And the preparations for the operation? It's all finished. Rather than starting a lengthy explanation, Shin Yusung simply handed a spare smartphone to Yu Yoonghyak instead. In the meantime, Yi Gilyong, grumbling away, pulled out yet another pet bottle. Humph. I knew you'd steal mine, so I prepared another one earlier. 6:55 p.m. Another subway was approaching them from the distance. All three of them climbed aboard the train. This subway of the third line smelled exactly the same as before. A peaceful sight of not one person worrying about the impending apocalypse unfolded before their eyes. While looking at the darkness of the tunnel streaming by them, Yi Gilyong abruptly muttered to himself. By the way, will the scenarios really start? With a slightly unsure expression, he sneaked a glance in Yu Yoonghyak's direction. During the past 28 days, the boy had been preparing for the apocalypse harder than anyone else. Somewhat ironically, though, he was now worried about the apocalypse not happening at all. Yu Yoonghyak addressed the fretting boy. It'll begin. It did so for the past 1864 times, after all. Those were the words coming from the man who waited for the apocalypse for a very long time. He didn't say anything else and quietly peered at his watch. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute. And finally, 7:00 p.m. Along with the loud screech, the subway came to a sudden and immediate stop. The commuters all screamed in panic as a sudden bout of darkness visited them. And within this scene of utter pandemonium, only 3 people were carrying relieved expressions. As if to illuminate this pitch-black darkness, Yu Yoonghyak's voice resounded out. The operation, Capture the Squid, will now commence. Chapter 531. Epilogue 2. Not Found Anywhere. Part 6. Once more, 1 hour before the apocalypse dot. Damn it, where the hell am I? Han Suyang held her spinning head and hurriedly scanned her surroundings. The last thing she saw was the figure of Yu Yoonghyak disappearing within the shower of light. She quickly took a look at her own body. It was a success. Her much thinner arms, and muscles that lost their suppleness. She couldn't sense any of the fables she had compiled, the skills she trained in, nor even her stigma. However, that wasn't a problem. They had already thought up of what to do with such issues, when the scenario got underway again. No, the real issue was, crap, I don't have much time left. Her smartphone's battery was almost out of juice, and she couldn't confirm the well-beings of her companions at the moment. It was a fortune among misfortunes that she somehow managed to download the locations of her companions from the chat room just now. These guys, they did pretty well without me. Just a casual browse through was enough for her to get a beat on where they were currently with their operation. That wasn't too surprising, though, considering that she was the one in charge of the operation in the first place. But then, Han Suyang's eyes scanning the map of the deployed locations, began trembling. This idiot. She raised her head and looked around her. Although it could be tight, there seemed to be enough time left still. Asterisk. 30 minutes before the apocalypse dot. Yi Jihai's eyes, dazedly staring at the clock, was suddenly blocked by a head full of black hair. Hey, crybaby. You planning to stay behind for the night classes today? And no. Ing. It had already been 28 days since the regression, but she still hadn't gotten used to that nickname. Crybaby. When was the last time she heard someone call her that? Once upon a time, she had other nicknames like that. And she had truly returned to such a time. Really? I was just asking, but why so suddenly? The other girl's eyes arched as if she was smiling. For every single day during the past 4 years, E.G. Hai had never forgotten those eyes. They belonged to a pale-skinned girl somewhat smaller than her. The blouse of her school uniform was missing a button. Her worn-out name tag, where her name could still be found. When she opens her eyes, the bloodshot irises would be staring right back her dot. E.G. Hai's trembling right hand was clutching onto the pant leg of her gym uniform. Ji-Hai, it'll be alright. E.G. Hai desperately grabbed her trembling hand. You must live. E.G. Hai? Her friend's hand approached from the air. E.G. Hai avoided that hand almost as if she was having a seizure. Ah, sorry. Were you saying something? She hurriedly asked. Are you feeling okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You want to bounce together around 7? We must not. E.G. Hai shot up from her seat and shouted out even before she realized it. Her classmates sitting near her all looked in her direction immediately. She sat back down and spoke again. We'll be high school seniors in a little while, right? So we gotta study hard for that. Crybaby, you sure you're not sick somewhere? 20 minutes before the apocalypse dot. The bell denoting the start of the first night class period went off. E.G. Hai pulled something out from her inner pocket, a small box covered in a crinkled wrapper. Boria. Here. What is it? Her friend saw the box and extended her hand. However, before handing over the item, E.G. Hai told her friend in no uncertain terms first. You mustn't open it right now. Okay? Only open it when it's 10 minutes before 7. Understand? You didn't, put insects in this thing, right? You know I've got a weak heart, don't you? E.G. Hai momentarily froze at those words. No, don't worry. I will definitely make sure you won't die. She finished what she wanted to say and stood up abruptly from her seat. Then, she pulled out a longsword stashed behind the classroom locker. Her surprised friend was still looking in her direction. Where are you going? Her friend asked. Bathroom. E.G. Hai immediately left the classroom. With good timing, the teacher in charge was walking towards her. E.G. Hai? What are you doing? Go back inside the class. Night classes have begun already. And what are you carrying on your BA dash? Teacher Nim, are you on duty today? It was the ethics teacher wearing the horn-rimmed glasses, with a slender physique and somewhat haggard eyes. Teacher Nim, please don't forget to open the number 2 locker in the staff room later. E.G. Hai slipped past the teacher, but the latter hurriedly reached out to her shoulder. What? Where are you? Ugh. Why is she so strong? Hey. E.G. Hai. E.G. Hai broke into a sprint. She ran down the stairs in an instant, entered the teacher's staff room and stole the keys to the broadcast studio. She then ran up to the 3rd floor, her heart threatening to explode along the way. The first scenario of the Taepung Girls' High location began several minutes earlier than other locations. That was the reason why E.G. Hai had been deployed in this very location. While panting breathlessly, she managed to unlock the door to find the rather familiar site of the studio. The Taepung Girls' High boasted pretty high-end broadcasting equipment. Not only that, the school was given the authority to make broadcasts to the surrounding regions in case of emergency, as well. While listening to the voice of the teacher still looking for her coming from downstairs, E.G. Hai pulled out the emergency power source prepared earlier. She then calmly set up the broadcasting equipment. As she connected the wiring, some memories in her mind also began to get connected, as well. She used to work here as a crew member, and during the lunch hour, she'd play the music she liked. That was her life. At least, until the apocalypse came knocking. She realized it once more while looking at her still-alive friends. The only person to survive in the classroom on that fateful day was her, and her alone. E.g. hi. She was startled by the voice and looked back, only to find an unexpected person there. Sooyoung Yoni? She must have been waiting for a while. Han Sooyoung raised her body up from the darkness and quietly studied E.g. Hai's face, before speaking up. You don't look so good. I'm fine. E.g. Hai stayed silent for a little while, then spoke again. The scenario. It's going to start, right? Otherwise, I might get suspended later, you know. It'll start. By the way, you don't really have start yours from here. You should hurry up and go to another location. Let me take care of this place for you. No. This is where I need to start. E.g. Hai smiled. Because this is where the wounded sword demon was born, after all. She then slowly sucked in her breath. The setting up of the equipment was finally finished. 10 minutes before the apocalypse. And then, it began. Along with the kuguguga noise, the sensation of the world's nature changing could be felt. Then, the sounds akin to drums being ripped apart came from an unknown location. And what came after that was... oh, my. The channel here opened up sooner than scheduled. Can you hear me? E.g. Hai looked at Han Sooyoung. The moment she saw the latter's face, she knew. Somewhat humorously, they had been living only for this moment. There is no need to panic, everyone. Let me say this first of all. This situation, it's not a film shoot. It's not a terror incident, nor are you currently dreaming. No, everyone, you're Dash. That was the voice of the Dakibi she hated the most. Screams resounded out from every classroom. Main scenario number 1, proof of worth has begun. That was the signal to commence with their planned operation. Emergency broadcast will now begin. E.g. Hai's own voice was coming out from the speakers. Everyone, please listen to me. Those inside the classrooms, please open up the cabinet for the cleaning tools, while those in the staff room, please open the number 2 locker. Hurry! E.g. Hai knew. Her companions must be making the exact same face as hers about now. Everyone should be witnessing this sight through the display panel the Dakibi had brought up. There is no need for you to kill each other. At least this time, there is no need. E.g. Hai thought about her companions. She recalled the promises made to them before coming to this world. At least I want to choose what I kill. Shin Yusung wouldn't start by killing a puppy anymore, and I'll save my aunt. Lee Gilyong would get to save the person he detested. Rather than going to the army again, I'll kill myself first. Lee Hyun-sung would lead the army, and I really want to save that grandma from back then. Yu Sang-ah would get to save the person she didn't. The probability will only allow for one opportunity. Meaning, the group regression can't be used twice. And Yu Young Hyok would never regress again. Finally, during this turn, I won't become the wounded sword demon. As the clamor of the school's interior gradually died down, E.g. Hai opened her mouth once more. Everyone, have you all found one for yourselves? Just like Kim Dokja of the past chucking the grasshoppers to other people. Everyone, throw those things down to the floor with everything you got. Along with those words, E.g. Hai broke the ampoule held tight in her hand. You have slaughtered a total of 133 life forms. Slaughter breakdown, 133 frog eggs. Acquired coins will be halved as you have slaughtered life forms lacking defensive capability. Total of 6,650 coins have been acquired. Main scenario number 1, proof of worth has concluded. Once more, they shall create a story not found anywhere. The Dakibi in charge belatedly discovered the unfolding situation and appeared before E.g. Hai. What the? Look here, you. What's the meaning of this? How can you even? And right next second, a powerful storm of probabilities aftermath began slamming into the entirety of the scenario. Also, the noises of massive amounts of coins being sucked out came from an unknown direction, too. E.g. Hai realized what was happening here. Suchachuchachit. Dear Constellation Nims. This is a misunderstanding. Director. No, wait. This isn't my FAU. The Bureau's inventory. Yuwa. Accompanied by the noises of the channel being disbanded, the low-grade Dakibi screamed and disappeared. 7:00 p.m. And that was the beginning. The night skies of Seoul were reflected on the windows of the studio. She saw the rift opening up on the other side of the sky. Subway's third line. Everyone, please stay calm. Grab one of these, and throw it down. Hurry. Guangwaman. Do not panic, and break the bottles you just received on the floor. Do that and you will survive. The hospital. Anyone who didn't get an ampoule yet? Throughout all the locations in Seoul, unexpected events were taking place at the same time. The prearranged scenario was changing. Unbelievable achievements are occurring simultaneously in every location of the scenario. A massive amount of coins are being taken out from the bureau. The whole of Starstream was shivering from the explosion of coins. Starstream is stunned by the sudden upheaval of the scenario. Dakibis of the bureau are freaking out at the excessive amount of coins being taken out, and many constellations observing the Korean peninsula are. The baptism of coins exploding in the air like fireworks, it was the sight of a world coming to an end. E.g. Hai looked to her side and found Han Suyong also looking up at the same skies as her. As if she was searching for those who should be looking at them from the night sky. Let's go and save a Juicy. Their operation had just got underway. Asterisk. While gasping out rough, heavy breaths, I regained my consciousness. It was unknown how much time had passed by. I slowly tried to move my body. Arms, legs, shoulders, without a doubt, the feedback I got had changed a lot from before. Kim Dok Ja Yo, you got a lot smaller. I smiled bitterly and looked down at my shrunken hand. The digits of my fingers had shortened by at least 1 centimeter compared to the last time I saw them. With a slightly exhausted voice, I asked a question. How many regression turns have I seen so far? 7862 RN. I had no idea that reading something with every fiber of your being would be this difficult. Every time Yu Young Hyuk and his comrades lived through one regression turn, I too had to live through it. The second turn, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Th it is The to Ti New York of The Most Ancient Dream. I read, and then read again, the fables created by the countless choices, and I watched various world lines spun off from them over and over again. Kim Dokja read the world as if he was walking along a distant beach. Fables waves rolled in and rolled out. And I gradually lost something of mine every time that happened. When I recalled something abruptly and looked back, I saw my own footprints left behind. Those prints were soon washed away by the incoming waves, and after staring at the disappearing traces, I'd resume my walk forward. Whenever I recalled the fact that I was gradually forgetting things within this flood of fables, I began thinking about the regression turn I lived in. And then, the happiness of the people who should still be living there. If I did. The tips of my hands were trembling. I suddenly couldn't remember the regression turn number I lived in. I unknowingly looked behind me, but the only things remaining there were Yu Young Hyuk's past regression turns. And what remains at the end will be the desire to see the next story. I looked down at my hands, now much smaller. What was waiting for me at the end of this long, long journey? Kim Dokja recalled the most ancient dream he saw during the final scenario. Would I eventually become the most ancient dream I saw back then? Would I lose all of my memories and become a giant mass of unconsciousness that dreamt of an infinite universe? He didn't want to end up like that. I needed to think. I needed to remember. When I came to, my hand was clutching onto my smartphone out of an old habit. This small world protected me whenever I became too anxious and too nervous. The black screen, its battery having lost its charge a long time ago, reflected my face. I crafted a simple fable and used it to operate the phone. That prompted a familiar wallpaper to pop up. And that's where the novel that started all of this was. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, Final Version. TXT. Until now, I deliberately avoided reading this final version. I was scared that, if I read it, something somewhere would become set in stone. I didn't want the future my comrades were supposed to live in to be decided by a story written by someone else. However, shouldn't it be okay now? The Kim Dokja Company's story had ended, and mine had been decided, as well. If I read this, wouldn't I be able to remember all those that I've forgotten? I still didn't know who TLS 123 was. And that's why I was curious. What did the author write on this final version? What was the conclusion the author came up with? And this story, where and how was it supposed to end? I slowly sucked in my breaths and extended my shrunken finger towards the text file. Just like that day when I first began reading The Ways of Survival. And so, that's how Kim Dokja's last reading session began.